What advice would you give out to young men out there, regarding consent?
Most of the advice I give is like across genders.
Okay, cross gender.
Really.
I feel like it doesn't happen as much for women though,
What?
Women don't get in as much trouble about consent than men do.
I guess, but if that's where like as a culture we're operating from of like, I just don't want to get in trouble, then you're not actually practicing.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Because there's both sides to it when it's like you should be able to have that conversation from there end too.
Consent isn't about not getting in trouble. Consent is about co-creating a pleasurable experience.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Mario.
And I'm Peter.
And we're
Guys That Listen.
On today's show, we got your sex positive Asian auntie, Jayda. Tell us a little about yourself.
I mean, sex positive Asian auntie is definitely in the name. My name is Jayda. I'm a sexuality and relationship educator, but I prefer sex positive Asian auntie because my goal really is to just like create spaces where people can talk about sex and in a judgment-free way, like they're talking to an auntie, Because sometimes it's like scary to talk to a mom, right? Like I never was able to, I still can't talk to my mom about sex or relationships. So I feel like I try to embody like the auntie I wish I had growing up. You know what I mean? Or like a cool cousin, maybe.
Yeah, I like that one better.
I was like, my imagination is really bad. I cannot see talking to any of my aunts.
Okay. I think it's me trying to be like, I'm feeling older than I really am. Yeah. Like if I'm thinking of like, I don't know, 30, would I talk to my 35-year-old cousin? I'm not 35, I'm 33. I don't know. I'm 33, actually. I feel older than I actually am, is what it is.
Me too. I feel 40.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
35 is super young.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so that's a lot of what I do. I talk a lot about unlearning sexual shame, all the taboo things that people have a hard time talking about. Lately, I spend a lot of time talking about non-monogamy and relationships that deviate from what we normally see in our culture.
Okay, let's talk about that actually.
We can, yeah.
How about we go into just you in general? Like how you, because like I feel like all this that you've developed, I think it's very critical to know how you were before.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
So if you could dive into that.
I'm going to pick an age.
Let's start.
One.
Yeah. Which we could go into.
Let's make it like an origin story, when you're younger, you realize this and it didn't really click.
Tell us how you became a sex superhero.
Such a good word. That's going to be the hashtag.
Sex superhero.
Yes. So I spent a lot of time in my college years looking at sexual trauma. So just to anchor kind of when I first started really thinking about sexuality, having sexual experiences. So mostly in my college years is when it kind of started.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time thinking about mostly the pain and the trauma that I had around sexuality. And so my childhood was basically unlearning the things I had experienced in childhood, which is essentially trigger warning for folks for sexual abuse, but I was sexually abused for a big chunk of my childhood. Oh, wow. And when I got to college and started learning about mental health, learning about trauma, learning about how to actually support people who are survivors, I was like, oh, that's me. Really sitting with oh, fuck, I have some shit that I need to unpack here. And that, with that, you sit with yourself a lot. You sit and think about all the experiences that you're having, how many of them are non-consensual, how much agency I do and don't have over my body. As someone who identifies as femme and grew up socialized as a woman, you learn very early on that your body is not yours, that mostly other people control or feel like they're entitled to your body in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Right? And I feel like as someone who grew up in an Asian culture, a lot of the misconceptions, I guess the stereotypes that we usually hear about Asian women, right? Submissive, docile, small, weak, something that's again something to be overpowered, something to be sexualized. And so again, my body never really felt mine, if that makes sense. And so having sexual experiences, not having sex education growing up, not having parents or siblings or anyone around me that I could talk to, a lot of it was self-taught. All my sexual experiences were self-taught, which is really dangerous. Because then to me, you don't, when anyone is just self-taught in terms of sex, you don't really know what is right or wrong, and things happen to you versus you actually participating in the sexual experience.
You're saying what I learned on Pornhub isn't real?
It's not accurate.
I shouldn't put my leg on.
Wait, what? My whole reality is distorted now.
Exactly.
Can you explain, because you were saying that you kind of dove into this in college, and was that more of through college, as in like you took classes on it?
Yeah, my major was human services. So human services is why are you laughing?
Sorry, servicing the humans.
Yeah, I know, which is exactly how I had to try to explain it to people in college too. But it's essentially like the people who go and become therapists.
Oh.
Yeah, and like social workers.
Okay.
So literally people who go and help other people, servicing humans.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
I know it wasn't what Mario was thinking.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I'm told.
So yeah, I took classes on addictions, and when you learn about addiction and like the root of a lot of people's addictions, it's trauma. Usually they're coping with something. Learning about mental health, we like studied counseling, and all of it goes back to childhood trauma.
Oh wow.
Always does.
It always does. Y'all know this with the other guests that you've had, right?
Yeah.
Like it stems really deep. So that's how kind of it started. I took a group counseling class. So basically it was like students were put into groups every single week of like 5 or 6. And essentially all of us would just talk about our trauma
Oh, what?
for like 2 hours.
Like therapy.
It was literally group therapy, but student-led
Oh, that's
group
awesome.
therapy. Yeah, it was intense. And that was the first time I ever shared publicly what had happened to me. The publicly with people I didn't know versus like some of my partners, or like, I think at the time, I don't even think my closest like girlfriends knew what had happened to me. But I was able to freely talk about it with this anonymous class. I mean, I saw them every week, but I don't really know these people, right? And so that's kind of what spiraled into like realizing that there was something deeper, and me wanting to like help other survivors. Fast forward years of like working in sexual trauma, I got to a place maybe like 5 or 6 years ago where I started realizing like I know so much about the pain and the like hard shit that comes with sexual experiences, but I can't talk about the joy. Like I don't know how to talk about sex even in like a neutral way from a biological perspective, because I didn't have proper sex education. That's how I decided to go into my certification. And I'm just like, I wasn't really planning on being an educator. I just wanted to know the things that I was never taught.
Oh wow.
And so I signed up for a certification to just be like, okay, let's talk about sex, y'all. Like, let's for real, let's get into it from people who like are more professional than I am. And started openly wanting to talk about it in a way that's like, let's talk about having fun. Let's talk about pleasure. Let's talk about like sexual experiences that are really positive for us, and like why we need to also focus on that, not just the trauma.
So you said that you hope that most people have this kind of sex education, and people are just kind of doing it all willy-nilly on their own, you know?
Yes.
What would you...
Trial by error.
What is...
Trial by fire sometimes.
This is not good. It's
So
not-
I don't think I know anyone who's like actually educated besides you.
I don't know that many people. I know a lot of people online who are like, I don't know a lot of people in real life who've gone through.
So
sex
what is
education.
what is it that we're missing out on? What is it that we don't know?
The basics of like consent, because consent is actually more nuanced than a lot of us talk about. So that's a big one. I feel like I can talk about consent all day as well. But to me, again, it goes back to like a lot of us don't have the skills to co-create a pleasurable experience. I think a lot of people, when they go into sexual experiences, they're carrying a lot of shit with them, whether it's like expectations or like stuff from the past, or at least a lot of people that I've worked with carry a lot of shame within themselves. So they have a hard time accessing pleasure. They have a hard time being present, right? They have a hard time really like enjoying the experience because they don't know how to speak up about what they like. They're not 100% sure about what they like because they've never really explored their own body. So then they expect that someone else is supposed to
Figure it out
for them, which is not how it works, you know? So just like really simple things like that I think that's what I've encountered with the people that I work with, at least. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just talking about sex. People have a hard time talking about sex outside of the bedroom.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
You know what I mean?
mean,
like sitting like this at a table and
Yeah.
like casually talking about sex is not that comfortable for a lot of people.
I mean, like with your bros and being
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But not in like a
The guys.
not in like a way. Like, not, you know, like
Peter, tell me why you.
yeah. Like, how often do y'all ask each other about? I mean, maybe
We
you
actually,
do.
we actually talk about it
Because
on
it
here
is-
pretty often. It comes
Good.
up.
Yeah.
Like we talk about it with our guests. Like, hey, like when was the last time, or what
Yeah.
are you into? And I always put Peter on the spot too, because like Peter has a kink where he he gets very turned on when girls cry, and it's a thing,
Interesting.
So
Is there a word? I don't know that one. Is there a word for that?
Yeah, it's courage.
I know, we just found that out recently.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. That's a new one.
Yeah, I didn't know myself.
Something with a K. Oh no, it's dacrophilia.
Acrophilia.
That doesn't sound as
aroused
cool.
by tears or
Dirty.
sobbing.
That doesn't sound as
It
good.
sounds like I should be shameful. But I'm not, though.
If they're, I know, like if they're cool with it.
We're both very open about it.
Yeah.
And we always like, hey, like not only in the sense where it's like, hey, this is what I'm into, but it's like, look, this is the kind of shit I've been through, where it's like,
That's the part. When I was thinking back on so I was in a sorority in college too, with an Asian sorority. And so we
What
never
college?
Cal State Fullerton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Fullerton.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
We never talked about sex, and how like in my head I look back and I'm like, we're supposed to be sorority sisters who know a lot about it. And we did know a lot about each other, but for some reason, not
Can you
for some
share that
reason,
part with you?
couldn't, because of our own cultural experience and shame around our bodies, shame around sex. Like, how were the 18, 19, 20-year-old girls supposed to be talking about sex with each other, right? Like, we all knew we were having it to some degree or not, but all of us felt so ashamed or just didn't know that we could even like, we had shame in our bodies to talk about it with each other. And I know for a fact there are like experiences that my sorority sisters have had that are not pleasant and not consensual, and they weren't able to talk to anybody about it. And that makes me really fucking sad,
Yeah.
And so that's the part where I'm like, we need to change that. And I think that's why like the auntie piece comes in for me. Like if I would go back, like I want to be the auntie to those, you know what I mean? To like my sisters, like that we had the space, we had felt safe enough to share with each other.
What would you say is a way to open that kind of discussion? Because sometimes when us as guys talk about it, guys not in just males, but the group, we talk about it's very surface level for the most part, and we'll talk about our experiences, like good or bad, but it doesn't really go beyond that unless it's usually within like a one-on-one
Sure.
setting, right? And I think it is because some people are ashamed, and I just feel like, it is kind of hard to open up that discussion. What's your rule of thumb?
For me to open that up?
like now that you're like, okay, we had sorority sisters, we couldn't. If I could go back, this is how I would start the conversation.
What I found is that most people now will come up to, or like will share with me, and I actually think people have done this before I got into sex education, but people would share their secrets with me all the time, like all the time, and I'm like, I didn't really ask to hear this, but okay. One thing though, ask before you share. Like, hey, are you comfortable with me sharing a little bit of
You're all eating.
Like,
Oh God, dude.
I was like, look, I was just trying to take the shot with you, but okay.
Everything reminds me of my ex.
You can't tell me you've been eating ass when you've been sharing the same drink. At least get your own straw, Jesus Christ.
But I think and I was thinking back on like, why are people so comfortable sharing their like secrets with me? And it's because I don't really judge people, and that's the key. If anyone has shame about something, it's because they've been met with judgment in the past, or they've witnessed other people being judged for the same thing. So if you have a kink, right, of watching people cry, and you shared it with someone and they've laughed at you, made fun of you, or said you're a horrible person, I think that can lead to some shaming, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, I laugh at it, but I also share my own, and I don't think it's weird. We think it's fine. Like,
Exactly.
totally normal.
So I think that's all it is. It's that to me, opening up that conversation is making sure that the other person, whoever's listening, is creating a space that's shame-free.
Wow, you're a girl who listens.
Hey, one of the guys who listens today.
It's funny because one of the drivers that got us to even start this podcast is like a lot of people would talk to us and tell us their secrets and talk to us, and like Peter doesn't judge anyone. Like I don't judge anyone either. Like you got your thing, that's fine.
Yeah.
Give advice when you can, listen when you can, and it's like we found ourselves having these really good conversations with people, friends, friends, strangers, acquaintances, and it's like, damn, like, you know, we should do something a little more about it. Like, maybe have a little bit of a platform where, like, you know, we can have these kind of conversations where, like, one, it's the ease, you know, like, you can't just, it's hard to open up and even have that conversation in the first place, you know? To like know that someone's not going to judge you for whatever it is that you're into or the problems that you're having in your life. And like, I guess one of the hopes for us is like us having these conversations, like being vulnerable, opening up, and like it will inspire or allow someone to do the same in their own life.
I hope so. That's all it is.
Is there a certain, let's say, sexual preference or kink that you would recommend maybe feeling some shame about? You know what I mean? Because like to me, I think my rule of thumb is as long as you're not hurting anyone, but as long as if you are hurting someone and it's consensual, then whatever's.
Right.
But in general, rule of thumb is like as long as you're not hurting someone. But if it's consensual and they ask for it, that's fine too. Yeah,
honestly, that's really what it comes down to is there's not a lot that I think, there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't do or there's a lot of stuff I don't understand personally, like a lot of kinks. There's a lot of kinks I don't personally understand but I'm not going to judge someone else for it if the way that they're partaking in it is consensual.
Can I ask you this?
I'm curious. Really preparing.
So I'm curious because I know some people, I'm sure we all do, who are serial cheaters. And to me, it's become such a habit that I do view it as like a kink. It's like, in order for them to get off, they have to be in a relationship where they're being promiscuous and like basically unfaithful. Like, because they don't seek that out of their significant other. And to me, that is like, it's consensual between the person that they might be cheating with, but unconsensual with their partner, which where I'm like, that's where the harm comes in. And that's why I'm like, maybe that person should feel some kind of shame, you know?
I think that person should feel a little shame. I don't label that as like a kink.
Cheating kink?
Cheating, I've never,
Because they get excited looking for that next
the
person.
thrill.
The thrill of cheating. Me, I'm like, that is kind of a description of a kink, you know what I mean?
Kink is so subjective too, because it's like anything that deviates from the norm of a sexual experience, but everyone's norm is different. Right? So your norm, some people, it's kinky to turn on the lights and have sex.
That's not normal?
Some people like
that. Wasn't a joke.
I
thought it was normal to have the lights on.
I thought so too, but
some people have very like, who have sex in the dark all the time. And that's kinkier to have it with the lights on and watch each other. Like kink is very subjective to the person. You know what I mean?
It's a freak.
It's like you want to see what you're doing, right? Like, I want to see the person
what's going on.
Look into the windows of their eyes. You know,
Mario's just a narcissist and he loves looking himself in the mirror. It's not even the partner.
That's not normal. That wasn't a joke.
Because you know what I mean? Like that, I've seen some sex tapes where like, I'm like, bro, this dude is looking at himself way too much. Like, this is not
looking at yourself a little is okay.
Yeah, but like when you're all focused just on yourself, oh damn, you look good.
That is like, I think there is a kink around that for people though. There is. Yeah, there's absolutely a kink for that. Yeah, but going back to the cheating thing, I do think that there's hopefully some shame in that because you are harming. It's not consensual between the person that you're actually partnered with. Yeah, and that's something that like going into like the non-monogamy sphere. That's the difference between like consensual non-monogamy and just cheating. You know, that's like a conversation that happens all the time with people who are like polyamorous folks or non-monogamous folks. They're just cheaters. I'm like, no, because like that's what they say. Like, it's just an excuse to cheat. I'm like, but if everyone knows.
Can you tell us a little about that? Because you're polyamory, right?
Polyamorous, yes.
Polyamorous. Well, what is the correct term? What are you, and can you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, I identify as solo polyamorous, which is even like less known than polyamorous. So polyamorous people, oh my gosh, it's like the non-monogamy is like the umbrella term, right? And then under that, you have different types of non-monogamy. So you have like swingers, you have people in open relationships, you have polyamorous folks, you have maybe like polygamy, which is like multiple wives, one man. So polyamorous really just means like poly means many, amorous means loves. So just the ability to love multiple people.
Solo.
I identify as solo polyamorous because the solo piece is, for me, I don't strive to be part of a couple in any way. So some polyamorous people will like still search for like a partner or multiple partners. They want to be kind of like enmeshed in some way. They want to live with someone maybe, or they want to like merge their life with one or more people, if you will.
Yeah.
I identify as solo polyamorous because I don't really care to live with a partner. I don't care to get married. I don't plan on having children. And I orient myself based on myself and my needs. I can have like multiple relationships, but my main relationship is with myself. Like I'm my own primary.
You're independent.
I'm independent. Yeah. Which some polyamorous folks don't like the independence of that. Some people think it's selfish to be too independent, which is really interesting. Yeah, and it's like you're too free, you're too solo. There's like less of an attachment.
That's crazy because being polyamorous in general is like very free.
It is supposed to be very freeing. Yeah.
There's even too free for those.
It's so weird. When I first like saw that people like kind of resisted that, or people treat solo polyamorous folks as like, okay, kind of like more casual, because you're not ever going to be quote unquote committed, which is not necessarily true. Commitment just looks different for solo polyamorous.
What does commitment look like for you?
It depends on the relationships that I'm in, but for me, commitment feels like I want to keep this going for as long as I can. Like I want to make this work, through the challenges, in the same way that I would be committed if I were monogamous. Like I want to nourish this relationship for as long as I can. Type of thing. To me, like I'm committed to that. I'm committed to seeing this through, right? Whatever that means. Even if seeing it through doesn't mean marriage, I still want to keep doing this. So commitment is just like I'm committed to a job, or I'm committed to,
how does
the
that
follow through of it.
So if you're solo polyamorous, does that mean you're committed to multiple people at the same time?
You can be. You can be. Yeah. Some people are. Some people are. Yeah. It's kind of a variation.
Or is it ever just one person for you, or is it? It has to be more than one, right?
Being in relationships doesn't mean, like, even if, like, for me, there was a time where even though I was solo poly, I only had one partner for a very long time.
Oh, wow.
For, like, years.
Oh, okay.
Because I just personally don't really look for relationships either. So my style of dating in general has never been, like, seeking. Like, I don't really go on apps. I'm not really trying to meet people.
Yeah.
I just exist in the world. And if someone comes along, cool. Like, let's see where this goes. And then to an extent, I'm available or not, depending on the connection or whatever. So, but I still didn't identify as monogamous, right? It's just my circumstances of not meeting people.
They haven't popped up.
Yeah. And it's fine,
Yeah.
So I think same with polyamorous folks. Like there are polyamorous folks who are actively seeking multiple relationships, and there are polyamorous folks who are in like one.
Yeah.
But they're open and potentially available to multiple.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
How does it come up? Like, how do you bring that up for a partner?
Like if I were to meet someone new?
Yeah.
I just tell them.
Them?
Yeah, I just tell them. Yeah, even before I like identified as poly, I said I was exploring poly for a few years. I think 2016 is when I started like exploring it. By exploring, like reading the books, like going to meetup groups, and like picking people's brains. Like, okay, you're poly. How does this work?
Okay, tell us that. Oh, sorry, we got detracted away from your origin story.
Yeah.
Sex educator, polyamorous. How does the
poly stuff start? I got cheated on.
Oh.
I dated someone, found out that they cheated, and their excuse when they admitted to how many people they had slept with was that they were probably polyamorous.
Oh, wow. It was that many people?
It was like three or four. I think three. Yeah, that he told me about.
Oh, wow.
I remember him in the like frenzy, right? Like when you're confronted about something like that, like it's kind of a blur. But him being like, "Oh, I thought you said one time that you might be open to an open relationship." And I was like, "This is not how you do it, though. Like, this is like not how that works."
Yeah. A conversation about that.
We're supposed to both know about it, not just you. Like, what? Yeah, so his excuse, or at the time, I don't know if his excuse was that he is attracted to multiple people and like all this stuff, and that he might be poly. And I was like, at least knew enough, because I didn't really know about polyamory at all. But I knew enough to know that that's not how it goes, and that it's actually more about honesty, not you get to go fuck around behind someone's back and then claim to be polyamorous. So that relationship ended. And I wanted to understand where he was coming from.
Oh.
Yeah, it was weird. I wasn't in a relationship with him anymore, but something about it really intrigued me. And I had actually heard about poly in a college class as well. Like I saw some video about it back in college, and it was so fascinating to me, not from like, oh, I could be poly, but from like, oh, that takes a lot of fucking trust. Like that takes so much communication. It takes so much trust. It's like, it's intense. I was like, I don't think I could ever do it. And so once I found out that he cheated and that relationship ended, I got really curious about just trying to like, I think when you experience something like that, you're trying to like connect the dots of what happened. And that's really what it was, is that I was trying to figure out like, how could this person cheat on me? Like, okay, if they are poly, like, let's figure out what does poly mean? Like, what does that actually look like? And so then I found I was living in San Francisco at the time, so it's actually really easy to meet poly info. It's like, it's going to be the place, right? So there was a poly support group that I went. There was a poly support group that I went to.
How do you find poly support groups?
I don't know if I had a friend tell me about this one or I found it online.
Facebook groups.
Something like random. Some like online thing. Found out about it. Went with a couple of my friends who were curious too. Grabbed like Ethical Slut, which is always a like one-on-one book that people pick up when they're learning about non-monogamy. And then this is the only time I made a dating profile. I made an OkCupid because I wanted to meet other polyamorous women of color and essentially interview them on like, how do you do this? Like, because all the people, so the people in the support group were mostly white. And that's fine and all, but it felt very like, or it could be easily misconstrued as this like hippy dippy white people shit.
I mean, you know sometimes I mean? It is.
And a lot of times
white people be crazy sometimes.
And a lot of times it is. I'm like, okay, so all these white people just like doing this thing, you know? And
I
like,
totally get that.
Right? Yeah. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be women of color or like people of color who do this, right? And so I made an OkCupid profile. I put very clearly like what my intentions were. And I was like, I'm just really curious on like talking to people who have experience in this and like, what is this? How do you do it? You know, how do you navigate it? And so that kind of spiraled into just like, I met really cool people who were really open about how they navigate relationships, and all of it sounded so freeing, as you said earlier. Like all the things I was hearing, I was like, oh fuck, this does not clash with me at all. Like it doesn't clash with my understanding of relationships. It feels open, it feels honest, it's transparent. Like those are all the things that I want, you know? And so then for a few years, like as I was dating, I was really open about like, hey, like I'm not saying I'm poly, but if I were to date someone, I kind of want someone who might be open to exploring openness with me, right? Or like, I was also just basically trying to date ethically, because I think in our typical dating culture, conversations around how to date ethically but not exclusively don't really happen. There's a lot of like assumptions that are made, like casually hooking up or casual dating, and like, you know, you don't have control over what I do and say, or me going out because we're not together, and like shit like that. And, you know what I mean? And so I was witnessing that amongst, you know, people around me, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I don't want to be exclusive. I don't want to control you, but I also still want us to be comfortable enough to share if we're ever jealous. Like if I go to a club and I see you there, or you see me and like we're talking to other people, like can we have a mature conversation about that without feeling some type of way, right? Or without being like, she's out with, you know.
How did your first polyamorous relationship happen?
We're still dating. Like true poly, like as in like, okay, we are we're doing this. Like all my casual stuff, we were never exclusive, and some ended really well. Like they ended, like there are some people who eventually knew that they were wanting a monogamous relationship. So that's a few folks for sure that I dated. And that was fine. You know, like I can't really knock someone for that. You want something that I can't give you, so please go find that for yourself. Like I'm really happy for you, you know? So that was several situations. There was another person who who was also, again, dishonest, even though we were not exclusive, even though I was still trying to practice. And
that's
this is what,
are you dishonest when they're literally telling you can't go do it?
That's what I'm saying. And that's what my lesson learned of like, it doesn't really matter. Like people are going to lie if they're going to lie. Like shitty people are going to do shitty things at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And so that was a hard lesson for sure. And then my first real, like, it was actually my boo that you met.
I was going to ask you. Let's get him up here.
He's too shy. He's definitely too shy for that. He's the first, like, both of us, actually, the first date we went on is because we wanted to talk about non-monogamy.
Oh.
And, he's the first, like, person, like, entering a partnership type of thing where we were trying to do non-monogamy together. And it's honestly been hard. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, it's hard. Yeah. It's really hard. It's
hard
not
with one
easy.
person.
It's so hard. And so, like, it's had its really messy moments. I'm not gonna, like, lie about that or sugarcoat that. It's not like, poly, even though it's right for me, it's not something I recommend for people. Like, it's not like, go out and try it and test it out. No, it fucking sucks. Like, don't do it. I don't recommend it. But also, like, if that, what feels closest to your truth, then okay, let's explore that.
What is it that's been messy or hard or?
So much of your trauma comes up, or so much of your shit comes up. All your insecurities, all your jealousies can come up, and like I think the hardest part is that in monogamous relationships, you generally have a guideline of like what's right or wrong or okay, and like people to talk to who will be like, all right, fuck that person, break up with them. Or like, you know what I mean? Or like, oh, you should work it out because blah, 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 blah. Like when you're seeking advice from other people, it's very easy to seek, people have a better understanding of monogamy, right?
Yeah.
So when you're going through challenges in poly and like all your jealousy comes up, your insecurities and stuff, if you don't have people to talk to about it, there's be like, well, that's what you get for being poly.
Oh,
you know, like that's really like, right? Like shit like that can really, really challenging.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is also, you know, a lot of people will say like, I can never be poly because I'm too jealous. And I think the challenge there is like, how do you actually move through jealousy when you're never taught to? When you live in a society that always tells you that like you're never supposed to feel jealous or like avoid jealousy at all costs or control your partner and what they're doing so that they don't do something that makes you feel jealous. Like those things are not helpful in a poly context. So when you're poly and you're trying to practice like relating and, you know, being free, you have to learn skills that you've never had to learn before, especially if all your experiences are monogamous. So, you know, prior to like 2016, all my experiences were, not all, they're mostly monogamous though, like towards the goal of monogamy of some point, of some sort, you know?
How do you work through it? How do you work through jealousy and do that? Okay, let's say we're dating and then now you want to see Peter and I'm jealous.
So stepping backwards a little bit, if you and I were dating, I think we would have to have a conversation if friends are off limits.
Okay, let's say Peter's a stranger.
Some people
I'm not his friend.
Some people don't have that. So that's a very realistic. That's a very realistic thing.
Damn, I didn't even think about that.
I know.
Yeah.
So those are like the little logistical pieces of like, are friends okay? Are friends off limits? Like, what is the rules around that? Because it's not a free for all. And I think people assume that polyam is a free for all.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just like, what are your boundaries? What are my boundaries? Right. And so regardless, like, say jealousy comes up no matter what, like, every person's jealousy is usually telling them something deeper. So what is your jealousy telling you? Is it telling you you're inadequate? Is it telling you you're going to lose something? You know, so you'd have to unpack, like, what is your jealousy?
Tells me I don't want to share.
You don't want to share,
I don't want to share.
So then that's really examining, like, can you really be non-monogamous?
That's true. Yeah, that'd be completely the wrong characteristic to have.
I'm in the wrong thing.
And it's more like, what does the fear of sharing bring up?
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. Because some people, there's people who are like, I want to be non-monogamous, but still have all this jealousy come up. And that's normal because you're human. I think people, like, the assumption isn't that like you're never going to be jealous. It's just like, do you have the skills and tools to unpack what your jealousy is really telling you?
Ooh. I know a couple who they have a certain dynamic to the relationship. She can go and sleep around with any girls that she wants, and so can he.
Okay.
But no guys.
One penis policy is what we
one
call
penis
it?
policy.
One penis
and I'm like,
policy.
I'm like, that sounds completely, I'd be totally okay with that. But if it's like a guy introducing to it, I'm like, now I would get jealous. Yeah. You know? Is that a common thing or?
Oh, that's really, really, that is contested in the polyamorous community because I personally would never agree to one penis policy. Yeah. Because it just, to me, that's where there's some toxic masculinity to unlearn.
Yeah. Because
there's still some entitlement of like, I'm the only guy, and there's like a sense of controlling your female partner and who she sleeps with. And so to me, like, that guy needs to examine why he feels so entitled to her. yeah, so I would have never agreed to that. But if people are consenting adults and she's okay with it, it is what it is. But, but I think there is like a, toxic masculinity thing that can be unpacked there. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. But and it comes down to like, why wouldn't the guy be willing to examine his jealousy? Because one penis policy is you're just avoiding it then. Right. Which is fine. You can choose to do that too.
Yeah.
That's actually fine. But you're just avoiding your own like internal work around your jealousy.
I feel like it's probably like what you grew up learning and what you grew up being told is right, where it's like, okay, it's monogamy is the status quo, and it's like you're with your partner and you don't let them fuck other people when you're married or as a boyfriend girlfriend, because you grew up learning that, like, at least in my experience, polyamory has been more of a recent thing that people have been more comfortable talking about nowadays, within the last few years. We even had guests here like who are like,
it's true, it's pretty great. Yeah. It's pretty great. I'm here for it. I'm here for the open conversation on non-monogamy.
I actually grew up thinking that I wanted like 5 or 6 wives.
Yo, that's real. I'm glad you could admit that. I love that. Yeah.
Because I used to watch these Chinese films, like old school, and the guy would have like 6, 7 wives. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Right? And then I realized how hard one relationship was, and I'm like, no, never mind. No, I can't do that.
It's not that good. Yeah. Okay, but going back to that, one of the things I always like, why I like talking about non-monogamy is also is what you said around, it's more common nowadays. Like in modern society, you see more articles about it. More people kind of know what the word is. Because I feel like back in 2016, polyamory is not a word that people really knew. But you brought up a fact that like non-monogamy has actually existed way longer than monogamy. And like, that's a fact. And so to me, it's going back to like a lot of different ways of relating. And this monogamy thing is actually newer than polyamory. We've been polyamorous for a long time as human beings. There are people who argue that that's actually the most natural way, but I just think everyone exists on a spectrum.
I feel like it used to be more men in power who have like multiple wives and stuff, and you didn't see it as much with women.
You did, yes.
Unless you're talking about like maybe like Catherine the Great. Yeah. But like other than that, it's always been like a more men centralized thing.
Yeah, I think in terms of marriage, because I think the institution of marriage is different than like having a relationship, right? Yeah. In the institution of marriage, I think you did see that more, where they have technically multiple wives. But I have a feeling that more women were fucking around multiple people than we know of in history, because we don't record women's history anyways. Yeah. So like, I actually think that it was common for women to have multiple partners. They were just more low key and they weren't married.
Like you really think the Virgin Mary was really a virgin?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, how do you navigate jealousy normally?
How do I?
In your relationships.
Navigate jealousy. Huh.
Now that I'm older, I try and have a conversation with my partner. And like, that doesn't mean I won't act up. I've had instances where I'm like, jealous, and like, and be like, you listen, like, I am jealous. Like, I'm making me feel this way. And like, I feel like insecure and I feel like weird and like, just like toxic, And in that moment, it might be a little harder to talk about, but we talk about it after, and like the day after that too, whatever, like conversate about it and like really like try and dig deep. Like, why is it that you feel that way? And I'm like, because I feel like, inadequate or insecure or whatever, That's a complete difference from when I was younger, when I'd be like, I didn't know how to address my own emotions. Yeah. And I would lash out and I was like, no, you have to be mine. Like, try and control this person. Try to like, you're not following the rules of like what a relationship is supposed to be. Because I grew up imagining what a relationship is supposed to be, and like when my partner didn't fit that mold, or where they went out of their like way to like what didn't fit in my mind was what a woman in a relationship was supposed to be like, or a girl actually, because I was a boy still. It just like I lashed out and I was like I'm toxic, yelled, insecure, all that. And now I'm like, no, I'm gonna feel my feelings. I'm gonna feel the jealousy or whatever, when I have to. Yeah. Normally I'm fine. Normally I don't get jealous. But when I do, I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's talk about it. Maybe not right now, maybe later, whatever.
Well, when I was younger, I don't know if I was really jealous when I was younger. I'm pretty sure I had certain instances. But when I was younger, thinking about back, I kind of, maybe I wasn't jealous because I kind of just overlooked everything, because I've been cheated on. And now that I look back, I'm like, it should have been pretty obvious that she was cheating on me, But I was like, I don't want to be a jealous person. So no, it must mean nothing, so I overlooked it. Right. And now as an adult, I guess, I don't know if you call it like avoidant, but like if instances like that happen, I'm just like, yeah, let's see what you do. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to try to control you.
Yeah.
But if you do something, I'll just leave.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, I'm not hurt because I'm like, you're just not the person for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's happened to me a couple times where like I could tell that it's happening or it's slowly like developing, and I don't feel like a specific type of way because I'm like, oh, well, this person's just not for me, so why would I be upset about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's like the most mature way to handle it, but that's definitely how my jealousy has developed through the years.
No, I get that. I think that's how I was for a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was just like, at the end of the day, like if I'm not the person and I'm not the person that you can be honest with too, then that says a lot about you. And I'm cool. Like, I'm, you know,
Yeah.
all right. It always comes down to like, I'd rather know even the worst things about a person than not know them and like be lied to.
Yeah. I brought this up recently too in the other episode. I was saying that, you know, there's people who say they wouldn't cheat and that's because they have no chance to cheat because like they're not, you know, attractive or they don't got money. They can't, whatever reason, cannot have the opportunity, right? They don't have options.
Sure.
There are people who do and then they choose not to. It's kind of like, oh, well, you know, that's really a testament of their personality, their characteristic that they won't, even though people might throw themselves at them.
Right.
Maybe even people they might deem as desirable too.
Right.
But they still won't act on it.
Right.
And I think now that, you know, because I do want to know that side of my significant other. I do want to know how they react in those situations instead of trying to control them and, you know, like I don't want you being in this situation going out because there might be guys hitting on you. I'm like, all right, well, if guys hit on you, what are you going to do? That's kind of more of what I want to know is like how they would react to a situation like that. Sure. Than not know and you know play you know just ignorant.
Yeah.
Like I've there's a situation where this one's kind of funny because me and my ex had broken up, but then we ended up getting back together. But when we had broken up, my friend had given me this book. It's called The Game. It's like a pickup artist book. It's pretty tacky, but you know he was like, dude, this helped me so much because then I got a game now. I got to talk to women. And that helped me get over my breakup. Okay. And then he was like, maybe this will help you. You know, and I read it. I was like, no, this is not me. And, but then I was like, I wonder if this shit actually works. So then, when me and my ex had gotten back together, she was telling me about how she might have a crush on her boss. And she spoke about the certain things that he would do for her. And prior to that, I told her about the book, right? And she was like, that's so dumb. Like, I would never fall for that shit. And then when she was telling me what he would do, I'm like, that's chapter 1 of the fucking book. I was like, holy shit, it fucking works, you know?
Oh my God.
So at that point, I was like, okay, well, if you're so easily influenced by some tactics that someone wrote in the book, maybe you're not for me, you know? And yeah, that's when I kind of realized, like, okay, yeah, it's easier for me to let go.
Good, healthy, avoidant behavior.
Yeah, I don't know if it's healthy, but
no.
What about you? How did you deal with jealousy?
I don't think jealousy is something you conquer. In the same way, I don't think like anger or sadness is something you conquer. Like, I really think jealousy is just a regular emotion that comes up the way any other emotion comes up, and you just hopefully learn how to like move through that feeling with sometimes grace, not really all the time though, to be honest, you know. But for me, jealousy has looked different in each partner, you know, and so I think in the past, it's hard because I didn't really get jealous that often. My most recent experience of jealousy had more to do with like, I felt jealous that the person that I was seeing was doing things with another person. Like they were going to concerts together and I love fucking going to concerts with him, you know, like, so shit like that. And I was able to name that, you know, and I was able to say like, yo, this is why I'm feeling these feelings. Cause like, I like doing that shit with you.
Like, but baby, you got a broken leg. Like you can't go.
And we're long distance.
Oh, okay.
So that was, it's really like logistically, like I know that there's nothing we can do really about it, but
maybe like a VR headset.
Right. You know what I mean? So
FaceTime you like.
Right. So shit like that, or like, yeah, just certain things of like, oh, you're doing these things with this person and like, I miss doing those things, you know? So stuff like that is just being able to name it, being able to talk about it, being able to be like, yo, I'm feeling this type of way. I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong, but like, I feel some type of way about it. Can we have a conversation? Okay. Yeah. Other times of jealousy for me, I realize that a lot of my jealousy comes from, so I also identify as queer and, I haven't had a lot of queer relationships. And so one core like insecurity of mine is not feeling queer enough when I date. Yeah. And so like,
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I can try. Of just feeling like if I'm dating a queer person, I feel like they're gonna
judge you.
No, like they might meet someone else who's more queer than me.
What
like either more
more queer?
Either more gender fluid or like maybe have more queer experiences, because I think so much of my experiences are dating cis straight men.
Yeah.
And so to some degree, like not only do I feel this, but like queer community is like, like, you know, especially because I'm pansexual. Like I really like a variety of people, and there's a lot of stigma around that too. Of like, just pick one. I'm like, I'm poly, I don't pick one. So I'm like, pick everybody.
I want to pick them all. She's like, Ash, gotta catch them all.
You get relationship.
Check on your chair.
Right.
Relationship.
Yeah.
For our audience who doesn't know the definitions, can you explain cis, pansexual,
yes. Sure.
queer?
I know all the things. So cis would be, oh my gosh.
And that's CIS, guys.
Yeah, CIS is like you identify with the gender that you were assigned with at birth. So I do identify as cis. When I was born, on my little marker, the doctor said I was female because I agree with that,
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, I'm cis.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with that, essentially, I can identify as trans.
Yeah.
Okay. Pansexual for me is attraction to people regardless of gender. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like someone's gender is not a factor on whether or not I find them attractive, basically.
That's it.
That's those two?
Yeah, it's just
okay,
those two.
cool,
Yeah.
cool.
I think everyone knows what queer means.
Yeah. So I think that's been kind of a thing that I've been working through, of like not feeling queer enough, and then my partner's going to meet someone who's like way more queer than me, or more, I don't know, experienced than me. And something like that. And so that was a new one for me.
That's interesting.
Have you worked through it?
I think it's always ongoing for me. But for the most part, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like, as long as I know I'm queer, then I don't really care.
Can we ask how many partners do you have?
I don't have any people that I call my partners right now, because I'm working on the definition of what partnership means in my life. But I'm currently seeing 2 people.
You're long distance and you move downstairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, he's the long distance one.
Oh, he's in town.
Oh, he's in town.
He's in town.
So wait, your first one is the long distance one.
That's him. Yeah.
Wow.
5 years.
5 years long distance. That's crazy.
We met in the Bay. So
Yeah,
it's,
that's awesome.
so we were
NSF.
not always long distance. We've just been long distance the last year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like 5 years long distance.
Oh yeah, that'd
I
be
was
hard.
like, you like make life hard on yourself.
But interestingly enough, I kind of like long distance relationships even before this one, and I think it's because of the freedom. This is before I was ever poly. I like that, like I can do my own thing and not feel obligated to like always see this person all the time, and they can do their own thing, and we can link
That's
up.
why-
That's
that's
why
why
I'm solo.
yeah.
Like it made
You
so
have
much
that
sense.
independence. You
There's a
wanna
lot
be
of
able to do
things
things
that
on your
like
own.
solo makes sense for me in the way I've always felt.
Does he have other partners too?
Right now, he's not seeing anyone else, but yeah.
But throughout your guys' relationship, he has had other.
5
Yeah,
years.
we've had, I think mostly we haven't really like had significant relationships with other people. Maybe it's like hookups and stuff. For a long time, we did a don't ask, don't tell, which is not what I recommend.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
How do you
recommend
how do you balance? You talking about like honesty.
I know.
And like,
Figuring that out right now.
okay, so
lot
we're
of
all
it-
flawed.
So flawed. That's what I'm saying. I do not claim to be an expert. I do not claim to be perfect. I do not claim to know what I'm doing. I actually know very little about what I'm
That's
doing.
awesome.
But a lot of it was don't ask, don't tell if it was just like a hookup.
Yeah.
Because those didn't feel, I think both of us at the time when we first started dating were like, I really don't care if you hook up with other people, like as long as you're safe about, like
Yeah. Be safe.
sexually safe about it. I don't really need to know. And I still feel similarly. Like, if it's just like a one-time thing, you met someone while you were out, like, again, he's a DJ, you out, you partying, you meet people, like, I get it. I'm not here to like restrict that. And I don't want you to feel guilty about that. If you end up vibing with someone, I just don't need to know. Yeah. If you're hooking up. But if it's someone that you're seeing like consistently, that was kind of the rule was, if you're someone you're seeing consistently, then that's like something I would like to be informed about, especially if it's going to alter our relationship and how often we see each other.
Yeah. If he's taking anyone out to concerts, for sure.
Yes. Exactly.
Like, hook up.
Yeah.
Nah,
hook up, but don't you dare go to concert with them.
Dare you?
So weird when you put it like that.
I mean, everyone's different.
Yeah. No, totally.
What concert was it?
The recent one was FKJ.
Yeah, I'd be jealous too.
I know. And I couldn't go to the one here because I broke my ankle.
How did you break your ankle?
I was indoor rock climbing.
Oh.
So we did not finish your origin story.
Oh, yeah.
Cal State Fullerton, friends and everything too. You took the sex certification class. You realized like, hey, you can help these, like you would have wanted to be the person that they could have confided in. How, and then you started taking your polyamory classes. You went to the group thing and everything.
Stuff, yeah.
You're still in the Bay at that point.
Yes.
How does that get you to where you are now?
So living in the Bay since 2015. So kind of that journey is the like polyam, then getting into sex education, and then just wanting to talk more openly and wanting to bring these conversations to whoever would have me mostly. So yeah, I started pitching myself to like universities. To talk with the youngins, because talking with college students is my favorite. I also think that they're the group that like they have like the cognitive ability to kind of talk about relationships, but they're still sponges to a degree, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so they have a lot of realizations that they're working through, especially like kids nowadays have way more sex education information than we ever did when we were growing up. And a lot of them or at least have heard of polyam or non-monogamy. They've heard of like, they're trying to practice consent in ways that we never got to learn. And so...
Can you come talk to like Latino people here down in Santa Ana? Because my people need it.
I can recommend
We have too many births.
I can recommend folks. I think that it's easier if you have Spanish speaking people who can, but yes, I can definitely recommend people. There's a lot of overlap when I started talking about my experiences as an Asian woman and sexuality. So many people reached out like, oh yeah, same with Latino community, right? Same because of my religious upbringing. And I'm like, I don't have the church experience that you do, but I get it. I get the purity culture. I get the shame. I understand this like dynamic of needing to feel like innocent or like, not real. Yeah, just not deviating from normal things.
Speaking of shame, what was your first experience where you had to overcome shame in something that you might want to indulge in?
I think for me it was the abuse that I experienced, like the actual sexual abuse, and like feeling like I didn't have control over my body, as I mentioned before. Or just like that I had sexual feelings. For some reason, like that's not something I saw as like normal or okay, because I didn't know anyone else who was open about their sexual feelings unless it was men.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't really, when I think about like women, at least like, growing up and even college or high school, like were there women who were openly talking about their sexuality? No, it was all these people rapping about it, all these people in movies of just like, fucking, but never actually talking openly of like, I like sex. I enjoy sex. Like there was no women openly saying that.
There really isn't.
Yeah, there really isn't.
I feel like even when guys talk about it, it's very surface level.
It is. It is.
It's like, I like to fuck. Okay, cool.
Like, what do you like about it? Like, what are you into?
Fingers in your butt.
Right. Yeah. But like people don't get to that level even of actually saying that.
And we can edit this part out, but do you want to talk about the sexual abuse?
Not that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we won't even
spent a lot of time talking about it in my life. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. Are there pieces of like sexuality within yourselves that you feel like you've had to work through some shame around? Or have you always felt pretty like, no, I'm pretty cool with who I am?
I would say that it's never been like, for the most part, it's, I'm pretty cool with who I am. Like, my first experience was with a long-term partner. So we got to explore each other and like kind of learn with each other, because neither of us knew anything.
Yeah.
So we both like, kind of like learned everything as we went. And there was never any shame. Not really. There's never anything weird, like overly done. Like we heard about, you can use like whips or like, chains, whatever, it's like, okay, let's try that, let's do that, So there was never any shame. Not really.
I love this for you.
Yeah,
I love these stories.
And I feel like maybe it's a little different as a guy, because where I feel there's more repression on women. It's like, oh, you have to be pure. It's like a lock can only fit so many like keys going into, you know, whatever. And as a guy, it's like there's some expectation where it's like, oh, you have to go out and like get pussy, like have sexual experiences, and like it makes you seem more like a man, like the more experiences you have.
Mars is a whore, by the way, so
So when I was younger, like I was more like that. I wanted to like, you know, have these experiences and like, you know, have game and like talk to these girls and like get them to come to my bed, you know? And like as I've gotten older, I feel like it's more empty when like you don't like know the person. Like when it's like you have all these experiences and I don't feel any shame about them in a sense. It's like, but it gets empty. Like it got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I kind of just want like someone that like wants to talk and like you want to have an emotional connection, because sex is better when you have an emotional connection rather than just having like meaningless sex.
For a lot of people, yes. For a lot of people, no.
Yeah. I mean, it totally depends. And it's like it's like when you've had it so long when you've gone so long without having like meaningful like connections, then it's like, okay, maybe I need something more meaningful.
Right. For me, I think the shame comes in with me. I don't know if it's like a sex thing for sure. It's like the idea that I don't want women to like control me through like sexuality.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I have a really hard time like allowing people to act like sexual beings around me, because I'm like this, like one, I think I'm a little scared because I'm like, no, that's not how you are. Like, you're just saying you want to have sex with me. Like, I don't think that. Like,
I don't believe you.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true, and now I'm kind of scared to kind of tread that line. You know,
interesting.
And I have a couple times, but it's still something that I'm like I deal with like very often, and I think it's also comes back to the rationale of I've seen a lot of guys who, you know, they have no fucking self-control, and I'm like, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be like the guy where it's like, yeah, you could want to have sex with me, but I choose if we get to have sex, not just you, you know? And I think that's, I don't know if it's like maybe I'm ashamed to allow that to happen, you know?
Interesting.
I don't know how
like you don't want to be controlled by your sexual desires?
Yeah. Like I don't want it to be where it's like, you could use this against me. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Peter is easy.
I mean, I honestly like do respect that, because there is a part of you like where it's like you're driven by these sexual urges and you will do this or do that. And it's like, you know, like the post-nut clarity. It's like, damn, why did I do that? You know, It comes in like the realm of self-development where you learn to kind of like control your urges. Like who is really leading here? Is it your mind? Or is it your dick?
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
And, like you're doing. He's a year and a half in of like doing his purity. What's it called?
Choosing not to have sex.
Choosing not to have sex. I did a year of like no masturbation, where it's like I don't want to be driven like by like, you know, these urges. So I totally get that. But I have a question, Dr. Jayda. I have a question.
Dr. Jayda,
definitely not Dr.
Dr. Jayda, my friend here, he finds it difficult to believe that women are sexual creatures.
Oh,
you know,
really?
There's been instances where it's like, and it goes back to your childhood too, right? Where it's like he finds it difficult to see a woman who's like, yeah, she can be horny and be hornier than a guy and like want to have sex, and like she's like, you're not gonna fuck her, she's gonna fuck you. You know, like she wants it as much as you do or more. You know, we're like, and me and him have talked about this before, but it's like, you know, something that he's experienced where it's like he's even found it hard to like tell a woman, like, you know, we on the show we had like it was, remember when Fanny was on here and you had to tell her like, vividly. Oh, you're cute or you're pretty, and he found it difficult because it's like kind of sexualizing this person, and he's had this kind of block where it's like women aren't as dirty and like horny as me, you know?
Yeah, and also what's that word that Adrian looked up? It was like reciprosexual or something like that?
Reciprosexual.
Yeah, so if a person doesn't want to have sex with me, I will also feel the exact same way.
Sure.
Yeah, so like I'm not, like, let's say, for instance, I had a significant other where we didn't have sex for like a year because she wasn't trying to initiate. She didn't seem like she wanted it. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I don't want to have sex either. But I'm not saying I'm not having sex because I'm just respecting her. That was one of the things. But I'm also not having sex because I'm not turned on by the fact that she doesn't want it. You know, so therefore my sexual urges are very low too.
Okay,
if not non-existent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, if I think about women like they're not sexual creatures, therefore they don't want to have sex with me, therefore I don't want to have sex with them.
Okay.
So it's kind of weird, like psychological, like vicious cycle type of
Interesting.
What's your advice here,
What
doctor?
is, I'm just more curious, like, what is the, okay, so if a woman is turned on, you tell yourself that there's no way she can be
like,
turned.
no way, she's just fucking around or something.
So then what actually does turn you, so a woman who's turned on,
Yo.
so a woman who's turned on still won't get you turned on because then you psych yourself or,
Yeah, so
analyze
usually it has to develop into something. So typically I am mainly monogamous.
Okay.
In very long relationships,
Okay.
4 or 10 years, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it develops into something like that, where it's like, okay, this person actually does want to have sex with me. We are talking it through. I am getting a better feel of what they want.
Right.
Right. So therefore I know. But in my head, it's also because like they like me a lot.
Yeah.
Like they, most of the time love me.
Yeah.
So for a person who doesn't know me, I'm like, okay, you don't really like me per se. You might just like the idea of me. So therefore, because you don't really like me, I don't think you want to have sex with me.
I see. Okay. Have you heard of demisexuality?
I have.
Do
Not
you
super
feel
familiar with
aligned
it,
with? Okay. My understanding of demisexuality, and it might sound kind of to what Mario was saying, like maybe you grow. Sometimes I feel like we grow into that demisexuality part. Basically, that you require an emotional connection with someone in order to actually enjoy having a sexual experience with them.
See that? I don't know. I've had like one night stands.
Okay.
I've enjoyed it.
Okay, great.
You have?
Very far and few.
Do you believe that they wanted to have that with you?
It's usually when they
But like,
They had to force themselves on him, pretty much. It's like, putting their head in his pants, like, Peter, come on.
it has to be, it has
Yeah.
like that's another thing I've come to realize is I don't like to leave things up to interpretation.
Yeah.
It can't
be really
like
direct.
It can't be like they just kind of graze my shoulder or some shit like that. I'll just be like, all right, cool, it's a small ass room. You probably just bumped into me, right?
yeah.
And like if you even if you say like cute or something like that, I'm like, hey, cool, that's just like you think someone's cute. You
Okay.
think a fucking baby's cute. You know what I mean? Like a dog's cute. It doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
So for them they would have to be like, yo, you want to fuck? And then I'm like, all right, I get where you're coming from. It's come to a point where sometimes where it's like, oh shit, you're naked. I still don't know why you're naked in my room.
You're not the first person I've met like this though.
Really?
In
No,
that
really.
case, where like you gotta you're not the first person I've met when it comes to
he's
that.
not?
No,
Oh.
no, you're not the first person I've met that like it. I'm gonna assume that you do not want to fuck me until like even if you're
Until
you're
you're
naked
inside.
on top of me like.
I had
Until you do really make the move, and then I'll believe that you want to.
Exactly. I've had an instance where my friends are like, this person wants to sleep with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know about that. And they're like, why don't you just ask her to go sleep in your room? If she says yes, she probably wants to sleep with you. If not,
Sure.
intimate sleeping, actually sleeping.
Yeah.
And then I asked, and she was like, yeah, sure. I went to the room. I literally just fell asleep.
Nice.
Nothing happened because
Nice.
I was like,
Nice.
nah, this person's just tired.
Yeah.
I just want to get some rest. My bed just looks comfortable.
Yeah.
So Peter and I are kind of opposites in that, where he believes like no one wants to like sleep with him.
And you believe everyone wants to sleep with you?
Like, not like that. More like, okay,
Egotistical hoe.
this person like gives you like some kind of sign. I'm like, she likes it. Like, what's it called? Jenny was here. Jen and Jenny were here. She touched my arm. She's like, oh, you're so muscular. I'm like, she wants to sleep with me. A lot of times I'm kidding, but a part of it, I'm like, I feel like I have a chance.
See that, and I think a part of the block in my mind is that I do care a lot about consent, right?
Yes.
And I feel like people do leave that to interpretation a lot,
Which is
because it's not very common that people discuss it, and I'm extremely scared of that.
Yes.
Right. So for me, like I remember the way I thought about it before was complete opposite, which is why I like worry about that now as an adult. Because when I was younger, one of my girlfriends was like, when we first had sex, she was like, oh, how come you didn't ask me? You know, because we just got into activate me now and just eventually led that way.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, isn't that kind of unromantic? And she's like, yeah, I guess. I mean, I wanted to, but I thought we were just going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, but we didn't. Like neither of us discussed it, you know? And that's where I was like, oh.
Super common.
Yeah. And I was
Super
like, oh.
common.
Yeah, of course, especially when you're kids,
Yeah.
you know? So I was like, okay, like maybe that's how it needs to be, you know? So until again, it's like blatantly obvious that that's what they want and that's what they're seeking. It's not something that I'm even remotely interested in.
Okay.
You know, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that would be one of the shames of mine, is that it's really hard for me to really acknowledge the fact that maybe that is a common thing for people to maybe desire that out of me. Outside of like just a relationship.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you want to believe that people desire you, or do you care?
I don't really care.
Okay. Well, then you're fine.
Yeah. I don't really care. I think it's
just the way you are.
Yeah.
I think the only time it bothers me is when my friends are like, "You're fucking dumb, dude." Obviously she fucking.
Oh, I see.
And I'm like, I'm like, is it really that obvious? Am I choosing to kind of be ignorant of the fact?
Right.
You know?
So I wanted to ask you about consent. Sometimes there's these two different ideas where it's like a woman wants you to know when to, just do it, just to take her and everything else. And sometimes like asking is like, kills the mood. How do you feel about that? And like, what do you think?
The mood is not that fickle. Like straight, because I've heard this from some of my friends before too, of like, oh, he asked to kiss you. That's so like, meh, that's a turnoff or whatever. I was like, that's not a turnoff for me at all. I enjoyed that, like, they were checking in to see if I was feeling the vibe as well, And so to me, like if you really want to do something with someone, asking them to do it is not enough of a mood killer for them to like change their mind. Like there's so many like other things that actually kill the mood. Like, and so to me, that doesn't really make sense. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah.
But I think that even for people who like would prefer that someone just takes the initiative, like you can have a conversation prior to the sexual experience where that person says like, hey, like maybe I'll give a signal or a word or whatever. And then that means like you go for it and you don't got to ask me or check in, whatever, you know what I mean? But there still has to be like conversation prior. Like I don't think that's
reverse safe word.
Yes. Like a go word, like a let's go word. You know what I mean? Because the risk is too high. The risk is way too high, in my opinion, to just assume anything about what someone wants. And even if that person, like the example of the person that you gave is like, oh, I just want you to take me or whatever. I just want you to do whatever you want. Like, what conversations did you have prior so that he knows what you actually like? And that's part of consent conversations, right? Like, so that person knows like what you actually enjoy, what you're down for, what body parts you don't want touched, what body parts you enjoy being touched. Like those are still conversations that can be had regardless of like, I just want them to do the thing. What thing? Like, let's be clear here.
What advice would you give out to young men out there, regarding consent?
Most of the advice I give is like across genders.
Okay, cross gender.
Really.
I feel like it doesn't happen as much for women though,
What?
Women don't get in as much trouble about consent than men do.
I guess, but if that's where like as a culture we're operating from of like, I just don't want to get in trouble, then you're not actually practicing.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Because
like,
there's both sides to it when it's like you should be able to have that conversation from there end too.
Consent isn't about not getting in trouble. Consent is about co-creating a pleasurable experience.
Okay.
Always comes down to that, right? Like
give us some words of advice then.
for people.
Across the board.
My biggest one is be able to have conversations about like sex and sexuality prior to the bedroom. So like when you're not in the heat of it all, when you're not like already turned on and things like that, like actually talk about it prior in a very neutral setting. Just like, what are things that are turn-offs? What are things that are turn-ons? And like, start there. Just like, that's the biggest thing is I think that's actually the problem is like, we're doing it in the heat of the moment and then thinking that the moment's going to be killed or like, it's going to be, yeah. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say that another like common thing that in terms of consent and how each gender is socialized differently is what I have also heard from my like guy friends experiences is they didn't fully consent to the experiences and they essentially like the girl that they were with, women are taught to also be performative when it comes to sex. Like, oh, of course the guy wants sex from me. So I'm going to do all these things that I think that they want. And it's, in order for them to like me or in order for them to like whatever. Right. Yeah. And so I have friends who have had sexual experiences that were not consensual, where the girl just kind of did things to them as well, because she was taught that that's what she needed to do in order to be liked, in order to whatever. Right. And so that too is like a conversation around consent that we don't usually have, where like, she wasn't asking for consent. No one knew how to talk about consent. Like no one knew how to ask And again, men, like boys, so it's not, this is boys straight up, like young experiences, like 13, 14, super, of like little teenagers not knowing how to like talk about these things, and then going into these sexual experiences without the agency to like say no. Yeah, basically. Or say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but we don't have those conversations because as you just said, like we kind of put the onus on men to obtain or establish consent when it's supposed to be everyone involved.
Yeah, I think that is one of the downfalls there. Where it's like it's expected for the dudes to like do it, like ask for it. So where it's like it should be a conversation between the both of them.
Yeah, 100%.
And you can avoid so many issues like that.
Or just be celibate. You don't have to worry about anything.
Avoid it altogether.
Completely avoid it.
Yeah,
100%.
completely avoid it.
What's something about sex that you wish you knew earlier, that you learned earlier?
I just wish I was told that it's okay to explore. Like it's okay to explore your own body. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think in order to have a relationship, like a healthy sexual relationship, like having a healthy relationship with your body.
Your little Christopher Columbus, like
Not Christopher. That's a colonizer.
I'm sorry.
Colonize people's bodies here.
Anyways,
Yes, exploring your own. I feel like that if we allowed kids to just like explore their bodies without automatically sexualizing them or just letting them like be okay, I feel like that's something I wish I would have known.
Can you tell us a little bit about pleasure? You mentioned it a little bit earlier and how you...
What about pleasure?
Oh, that's actually anything and everything.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's sort of a taboo subject.
Is it?
You don't really, it's very close to what when we talk about sex, right? People can talk about sex and talk about like, oh yeah, me and the bros, like, oh, this girl, that girl, with the girls, like you talk about like, oh yeah, this dude, whatever. But you never really talk about like what pleasure means to you or how you derive pleasure or the different ways you experience it or what it really is. And I feel like you might have a better handle on it than most.
Maybe.
And you're more comfortable talking about it than most people.
Sure. I mean, that's the part of going back to like, I wish people were taught to explore their own bodies so that they know what is pleasurable and what is not pleasurable. Like in instances when people like pull someone's hair that they're, hooking up with, like, how do you know that they like that? How do you know that that's pleasurable? Right. Or like spanking and things like that. How do you even know that someone enjoys penetrative sex? Like, what if it's all these other things that they enjoy? And I think that's, to me, like everyone knows to an extent, if you're already having sexual experience, you know what feels pleasurable for you, but are you able to like actually explain why, how to get there? Can you get there on your own? Are you like able to teach someone else how to pleasure you? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. How do y'all know you're having pleasurable experiences? What does pleasurable sex look like for y'all?
Pleasure and sex for me. Well,
or is it just like an act that's kind of there?
No.
Okay.
I enjoy it thoroughly, but it's always about the other person first, and that's what I get pleasure from is the other person, really. And I think that, I guess I like consent a lot because I would like to know that they enjoy and that this is what they want. And for me, that, there's a lot of pleasure that's like derived from that. Already again, if people are not feeling it, I personally don't feel it either. So like the idea of just as a guy, fucking coming or some shit like that, just is not really that attractive to me. Yeah. In general. That's not like I like the whole thing.
It's not like the goal. You're not like goal oriented with your sex.
Like I enjoy the act of having sex in general, even when it's with someone that I don't fully know. But I do notice that like my goal is to always make this person feel very comfortable. And that usually comes with time. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, getting to know someone, getting to know what they like. And that changes the way I derive pleasure a lot because I've noticed that with strangers, it's super hard for me to come. Yeah. But when I like fall in love with someone, and that's nothing, just not even strangers, right? It's like, let's say I'm dating someone and we're just a couple months in, right? Still, same situation. And it's only until it's weirdly enough where I love this person that it changes completely, like everything.
You just come in a minute.
It's not that, but it's like what's really weird is like if I'm in love with the person and they're coming, it happens at the same time for me.
Oh,
every single time.
No,
it's really weird.
No, it's
that's not weird. It's great.
I mean, no, I'm not saying weird isn't a bad thing. I don't think weird is necessarily bad. Yeah, I'm just saying that it's a strange thing that's not normal for a lot of people.
Sure,
and
not as common.
Yeah, and I've noticed that. I was just like, this is really crazy. Like every time on the dot when they let me know, it's like it's my time too. It's interesting. Yeah, but only to the people that I love.
The emotional connection.
Yeah.
I think that leans into the demisexual. I want to say, I don't know. There's like a stronger, maybe more pleasure as the emotional connection is grown. But I don't know.
I think for me, like it's hard because I think I've developed this like mindset where it's like the goal is to make your partner feel the most pleasure that they can. You know, I want to make my partner come. You know, if like, you know, when I'm with a girl, it's not going to happen. Obviously, it doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't happen the first time always, but sometimes it does. You know, and it's like my goal is always to get my partner to get off. You know, because that's what gets me off. Where it's like it's sort of like maybe like a power dynamic or something where it's like I know that I can make this person, you know, orgasm or come, you know, by my own skill. So like let's say it's like 90% of me, like, you know, and it doesn't mean it's like I'm in my head and there's times when I've been in my head, but it's not like that all the time. But it's like I go through these acts for the purpose of making sure my partner is as pleasured as possible.
Interesting.
And then I get my pleasure at the end when I finally come.
Okay.
You know, but throughout the whole process, I'm thinking, I'm like, how can I make this person's experience more pleasurable? Like, what can I do and how do I do it? And it's like when it works, sometimes like there's been times where I'm like, you know, it has been like, so it's our first time and we do it and I can get them to come. And I'm like, there's this sense of like, I don't know, like accomplishment where I'm like, somebody give me a fucking gold medal. You know, because it's not easy. It's not easy when you don't know the person's body. You don't know like how they are. And it's like, you get it on that first time.
It's not easy for men.
It's not easy for men. No. Yeah. And the thing I've learned, it's like more than 50% of the time, it's never about penetrative sex.
No.
It's always all the.
It is for guys.
It's always the warm. It's for guys. Yeah.
That's the fucking issue, right? It's like, all right, you know, like that's why I said like I don't really care about coming like that because again, it's like I'm a fucking dude, right? Like, if you do enough, I'm like, yeah, I'll get there. But to me, it's not about the end goal. I'm like, it's not really that pleasurable because to me, I want to remember like the whole experience, and I think that's very different for some people because they just want to get to the very end.
Yeah,
and you know, like I feel like a lot of guys feel shame for like busting early or something like that. That's very common, right?
Sure. I actually heard something on, I think it was on K-Rock, where there was this person who called in and they were like, yeah, I dated this guy who like, he'd bust in like 2 minutes and then he'd act like, you're welcome. Wow. Yeah. And she was like in love with, she's like, I just love the confidence so much. And like, I kind of took from that. I'm like, anytime I've ever busted early, I'm like, you're welcome. Best 2 minutes of your life, but also give me 15 more minutes and you'll get 2 more minutes.
I hope they laugh at that. Okay, so going back to your question, because your experience is going back to like what do you wish people knew about sex, right? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Or something you wish you knew.
Something
from before, or like you wish you knew earlier. Yeah, is that sex shouldn't be goal oriented.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. So that's something that I wish. And that's actually contested, like something that's contested too in the sex ed space is that there are a lot of women who are be like, the orgasm gap. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Where like cis hetero men come more than cis straight women.
Because they don't know how to get them to that point.
That like a lot of, like not enough, like only 20% of women have orgasms during sex. And then like, I don't know, it's like 80% of men or something like that. Yeah. So there's a gap, almost like the wage gap, but an orgasm gap.
Let's not get into that
that's
one.
Honestly, I know. But that's how they're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And to me, a lot of that rhetoric then has a lot of women being like, yeah, he should be able to make you come. And I'm like, that's actually very dangerous of an idea. Dangerous, not like harmful, but then sex becomes goal-oriented and you reduce the experience to just getting off versus having a pleasurable experience throughout the entire time, which is what Peter was talking about, right? Is like, and the same kind of what you were describing is like, I want her to have the most pleasure as possible, but the most pleasure as possible, it doesn't equate to orgasming. Maybe for you it does, but not every single person is like the most pleasure I ever have is having an orgasm. Like if we go back to the conversation around kink, a lot of kink actually doesn't have sexual acts in them, but that could be more pleasurable for people than the act of sex itself, right? And so, one thing I wish that we were taught is that sex doesn't have to have
any goal besides pleasure, and that no one thing is more pleasurable than the other. Like penetrative sex is also not the goal, right? Orgasming is not the goal. That like, as long as you enjoy yourself, whatever you're doing is great. So I wish that we were taught that more, because I hear the same thing of like, if I didn't come or if she didn't come or whatever, it's like disappointing sex or something. And I'm like, that's not really true. Like, and it takes you out, it keeps you from being present in the moment.
Yes.
And that's the hard part is like, and it puts a lot of pressure on people to come, and people can't, sometimes people don't come with partnered sex and they only come with solo sex, like on their own. So it just, to me, like I would rather remove all that pressure altogether.
That makes me want to kind of shift my mindset on sex, because at least for me, it's always been goal oriented, where I'm like, I think of myself as a giver, and like I want my partner to like, feel pleasure, like, maybe not at the expense of me, but sometimes, I have been in my head, or like I'm not enjoying the experience, I'm not present, but I'm like, am I pleasuring this person? Hell yeah.
At the end, right.
You know, and it's like they're having the experience, and like for me, I'm like, I'm getting pleasure from that to an extent, but I'm not present.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key. And that's, a lot of people are having sex that's where they're not really present in the moment. Because that's actually, I feel like one of the hardest things is like actually staying mindful of your body as it's happening.
So we're at the part of the show where we ask you about your craziest dating stories.
Honestly, I don't know if I can think of off the top of my, maybe I blocked them out, you know what I mean?
All right, let's flip it.
Yeah.
Craziest like kinks and stuff that you've experienced.
I have been to like kink clubs.
Yeah.
Kink clubs.
Yeah. So in San Francisco, there's like public clubs that you can just go pay an entrance fee. And then you watch all these people play. Essentially, you watch all these people do stuff. I haven't participated myself. I really went out of curiosity because I'm like, I'm really curious on what people do, you know? I think the wildest I've seen, but this was actually at in public, at Folsom Street Fair. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before.
Sounds familiar.
Folsom Street Fair is a huge BDSM and kink event in San Francisco that happens every year, and it happens on the streets of San Francisco, so out in open. The wildest thing I ever saw was like someone laying in a kiddie pool and then having people pee on them. I know.
Good thing's pee sterile.
But what grossed me out was like the really yellow pee.
This is their vitamins that day.
Like you're not hydrated enough. Like, I feel
there's
like
extra vitamins.
Yeah, is that what it is? I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's probably the wildest that I've seen. But you see people get tied up, you see people getting spanked, you see all that stuff. But I think having just like literally laying in like one of those plastic kids pools and just having everyone pee
I
on
wonder
them.
why kids pull. And I'm curious what the psychology behind that is.
I don't
like
know.
how far back does it really go?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it was my
His
parents.
little cousin peed on him when he was a little kid.
It was their parents who told them not to go into those pools because all the kids pee in that pool.
and now
all of a sudden now they want to be that kid in the pool.
Take
with
that,
all,
mom.
Yeah.
Let me show you.
You know how we were like, we don't shame people or anything. Like the only thing where I'm like, you know what's a little sus? Pee and scat stuff. I'm like, you know what?
Which one's the scat stuff?
It's poop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or they poop on you, or they take a dump on your chest, or they pee on you and stuff. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't judge y'all, but I judge y'all a little bit. Like, just a little bit. That was just like,
sanitary.
Yeah.
The most interesting that I heard of before I became a sex educator was the kink of vor. VORE.
Wait,
What's that?
Any guesses?
Or it sounds
VORE.
like
No, I don't know. I don't know.
something to do with blood.
It does sound like something to do with blood. It is the kink of wanting to be swallowed whole.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that.
How did you see this, Peter?
Honestly, I'm a fucked up kid. You know,
Okay.
like I grew up like going through like the sites that you should never go through.
You ever
like,
hear that video, Two Kids in a Sandbox?
No, I don't want to.
Oh, well, Peter's the one who sent me that video.
yeah, it's crazy to me because I talk to a lot of people and people always, I'm like, who would do that? And I'm like, you don't fucking understand that there's a lot of fucking people
There's
out
a kink
here.
for everything.
Yeah,
There's a kink
it's
for
a
everything.
fucking numbers game at this point.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like the fact that you think that there's not something that someone will do or be into, that's insane to me.
How I learned about it was because I actually have like pet snakes and before, I know. So I have pet snakes.
So she's Slytherin.
And there was like, I watch a lot of YouTube on like learning how to care for your snakes and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was always this channel that would come up that would be very like sensational. I would show this giant like python or something like swallowing a baby pig or like, like animals that like you would not normally feed a snake essentially. And it was labeled as educational content. And then I found out like later through like Reddit forums or something that it's actually a vor like vor content labeled as education. And so it's very like, yeah, they feed them the biggest like animals so that people enjoy, like, and like video in onto like their mouth and shit like that. Yeah, so that is a kink that people have, and how I was figuring out like, how do people actually do this in real life though? Like, how can that be a kink? And it's mostly fantasy because like you can't logistically do that in real life, and so a lot of it is like the envisioning of you being swallowed whole. So maybe they like create a contraption where they feel like they're closed in and like going into something. I don't know.
Yeah, I saw something that was like a suit.
Yeah,
so it's like a bubble suit, and you go into it.
Into this like
thing.
it's like
then you're kind of like stuck. It's pretty.
This must have been something that happened to him during the womb, where like the doctor was pulling him out and stuff.
Yeah, imagine trauma coming from when you're like a couple hours
when you're
old.
born,
That's
which is real.
You know what's crazy? Like I read a lot of like fantasy and sci-fi stuff, and like I always think like, you know, if we had like magic and stuff in our world, the amount of kinks that could take hold would be crazy. Like you could make that happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Have something swallow, some gigantic swallow you, like.
So you know how I said that the first porno I ever watched when I was like 3? And it was
it vor?
Huh?
Was it vor?
No, it was actually a cartoon porno.
Okay.
And it was about witches and stuff. Nice. And it was like
that's
they were
why
doing
he
like
hates Halloween Town.
Oh yeah, that's but I was like, oh, that's interesting that you said that, because now I'm like, oh, that's one of the first things that stuck out in my memory as like a child, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend accidentally like went over to a neighborhood's kid's house and watched like some kind of kinky porn for the first time too, when she was like 5 or 6 or something.
Yeah, we've actually talked about this. I think I watched porn when I was like 6 or 7.
Wild.
My older cousin showed me. We were watching Showtime, and to this day, I remember.
Showtime.
Yeah, it was lesbian porn.
Yeah,
and I remember to this day, like the girls and everything too. And since then, like I think it's because of that. Like I've never like been attracted to like lesbian porn. Oh. You know, like there's dudes who be like, yeah, I want to see 2 girls like get off and everything 2 together, and like for me, I'm like, it didn't do anything for me like at all.
Do y'all remember MTV's Undressed?
Yes.
No.
That I feel like was. I want to find that and try and rewatch. It's basically. It's not really porn though. It's not. It's like more educational and like kind of teen drama, but it was by MTV, and I think they tried to do the sex education stuff that we probably are talking about now in a way that's pretty tasteful, and I wish I could stream that now to see if it was accurate.
How old is this?
It was like when we were probably teenagers or like younger. I only remember it because I remember being a kid and watching that, so I was like, oh, I don't think I'm supposed to be watching this. Like, you know, it was like
and
late
as a kid,
at night.
I was like, I want to watch this.
Yeah.
It's either that or Channel 39.
Something
or you
like
go
that. Yeah. So
Channel 39?
Dude,
Channel 39 was
no.
the channel that had like all the blurred stuff. So you'd have to be, it's all like static, but it would like stream like the adult shows like Showtime and HBO. So you could see like a little static titty, like, you know.
Oh my God, dude.
That's what you had back then. You didn't have the internet.
No, don't get me wrong, because I am thinking about how fucking desperate we were as kids to figure out what was going on those channels, you know?
Yeah.
It was like,
we didn't have anything else.
I think I only had like regular television, right? No cable for like the longest time. So channel 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3. But then there's sometimes channel 8, which is, you know, between 7 and 9, it would have like, I'm like, damn, am I just really making up these like visions right now? Because it's like blurry and like just staticky. But like, I was so curious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy how far we go to like seek that kind of like information as a child, because it's not, for one, it's not broadly like available. Well, now it is. You know what I mean? Now it's kind of like, fuck, dude, like anyone could find that shit, right?
Yeah.
But as a kid back then, like that, you know, people didn't talk about it. You couldn't really see it. Like when kids found it, they were so like excited to share with other kids, or at least that's how it was with guys. Like, to be honest, right? Guys would be like, "Hey, come to my house. I found my parents' VHS." You know,
because I remember that too. Like you'd watch Girls Gone Wild, and like there's
my God.
You'd wait. There's like the 20 seconds and then the 10 seconds where they show girls and it's kind of like almost a titty, and you'd be like, oh.
But there's like a star.
Always a star in it. Well, girls like that at all.
What a time. Oh yeah, I remember those. I definitely remember those and just being like, I don't think I'm supposed to be watching this, but like for some reason it's really intriguing.
Yeah, dude, for some reason it's so and it's not like we were like, you know,
no, not at all. But it was just like you're fascinated by it.
You're fascinated. You're drawn to it. Like, you know.
Actually, when I was a kid, after that, you know, weird cartoon porn that my aunt put me on, like
sex positive Auntie.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
just kidding.
I don't know if she's sex positive for doing that, but I do remember after seeing that, I was like, I knew I was slightly traumatized from it because I remember wishing that men and women didn't have like genitals. Oh. That they were like dolls, like Ken Barbie dolls, where they didn't have like any genitals. Because I was like, what the hell is that? Like, I didn't even realize that like I had a genital. You know, I was fucking
yeah.
I was like, what are these weird, ugly looking things? You know?
Interesting.
And it stuck with me for like a while.
What's the most important thing you've learned about sex?
Aside from the things that we already talked about.
Yeah.
I think for me that like I have agency over my body.
Okay.
Like period. And all of us do. That as individuals, like we all have control over our own bodies. It sounds so simple, but as I said, like when you grow up in a society that tells you that you don't, or that everyone else has control over your body and you don't, like that's probably the biggest piece for me, is that I have control over it. I get to decide what is okay and what isn't okay. Probably the most important thing. Thanks, y'all.
That was great.
Hey guys, welcome back to Lightning Round, where we ask our guests some rapid fire questions. Jayda,
Yes.
are you ready?
Sure.
3, 2, 1. What's your favorite color?
Gold.
Oh, that's a new one. Favorite food?
Thai food?
First kiss?
At Cerritos Mall.
Are you Filipino?
Yeah,
No, but he was.
Oh,
He was.
how old were you?
I think I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you lose your virginity?
A month away from being 18. Same person.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Last time you cried?
Last week.
What are you proud of?
Ooh, I'm proud of the journey that I've been on in my sexuality.
What makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Sunshine.
Something you're weirdly good at.
Nothing. What am I weirdly good at? I am weirdly good at, finding humor in almost anything.
That all left on life? Okay.
Yeah.
What's your fetish?
Oh, I don't have any.
Wow. And the streak
I
continues.
know. I'm sorry. I've thought of, I don't have like so a fetish is like, I know this is very sex educator of me. You know, a kink is something that deviates from the norm, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A fetish is something that you need in order to get aroused or get off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, it's usually something like, it's kind of like a requirement. Like when people have foot fetishes, like they gotta have the feet imagery in order to get off, or they gotta have the feet imagery in order to get aroused. And I don't think I have anything that particular.
Oh.
And maybe that's why people haven't been able to answer. I don't know, but
Dang,
like,
okay, we learned something new today.
yeah. So like, I kind of wish I did, because I think it'd be interesting to explore, or I haven't found it yet.
What's your kink?
I don't think I have. I mean,
and
because like the kink is so subjective.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I just don't think I want to explore rope stuff, but I haven't yet. And that's the only kind of arena of like BDSM and kink that I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool, because I watched it at the parties and I was like, that looks really interesting for some reason. So like restriction, I think is really cool, but I'm not into like pain.
Yeah.
So like very clearly, like pain does not turn me on at all. But I think the idea of restriction does. And so something about the rope play, I think, is really interesting. So maybe that'll become a fetish. I don't know, but I'm not there yet.
Weirdest place you've had sex?
At the sex club? Is that weird though? No. Okay.
It's actually very normal. Sex at the sex
But I think because other people haven't done that I'm like, I guess it's weird to some people, but I don't think I've had at the sex club.
Favorite movie?
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right now,
Good.
that's it's like life changing.
What would you change about yourself?
I'm pretty content with like who I am at this point right now. So I don't know if there's a lot that I would like really change besides like, I wish I could sing. That's probably like, I wish I could like, but I think I'd be too powerful. I think
too much power
I think
there.
that like, I think I'd be too
over for you.
cool. Yeah.
I feel the same way. If I had money, looks, height, I would be so powerful.
That's exactly. If I had height, dude, I'd be like unstoppable.
Right?
That's all I need. That's all I'm missing.
If I could sing, man.
What's something you find physically attractive in your partners?
Usually a smile.
Okay.
Yeah. And in folks of all genders, I really like someone's back.
Back.
I don't know why I like someone's back. Just like in general, I like the back.
What kind of back? Like broad back, small back?
As long as they have a nice back.
As long as they have a back?
Yeah, as long as they have as long as they have a back, because everyone's bodies are different. I was like, oh, that's a nice back.
What's something emotionally that you find attractive?
Ooh, definitely self-awareness. And similar sense of humor. If they think I'm funny, I think that's very attractive.
I think she likes this.
I think we'll be good friends.
And my last question for you is, what's one goal or dream that you have for this year that you want to accomplish?
It really is a goal is to start my own private podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is inspiring. The fact that y'all have this set up and like are doing it, I'm inspired.
Nice. Yeah. Come through anytime.
For sure.
Instead of a polyamorous group.
All right. So, what's your perfect number of partners?
As like a polyam person, like how many? Oh, I don't have one.
7?
I could. No, it's exhausting.
If you had to have a kid, right? How many?
Here's my answer to that.
I think her vagina just dried up right now. It's shriveled.
I would co-parent with 3 other people.
3 other people.
Hey, 3.
Like I would co-parent because I think you need more than 2 people to raise a child. So it's not the number of children. It's like how many people can take care of it.
Take care of it.
Take care of the child. Yeah. I would like be 25% co-parent of a child.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a numbers game right there.
Yeah. I just feel like that's easier. So I would have 1, I guess, but it would have to be with like 3 other people.
What's your biggest fear?
Falling again.
Okay.
Straight up. Yeah, I think
that's that bad.
I think so. Yeah.
Wait, did you break your leg?
I broke 2 bones in my ankle.
Holy cow.
So I always had a fear of falling. I've always had a fear of falling. That too. As an avoidant person, yes, actually. But I've always had a fear of falling, and I think like this probably made it a little worse.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Before, my fear used to be like I used to be scared of hurting people, and now I've kind of
Makes sense.
You mean
like emotionally, yeah.
I thought you meant like
I'm gonna kick people's ass. No, I think that used to be my biggest fear is like hurting people, and I think I've gone to this place of accepting that we all hurt each other to some degree, and we just kind of do our best to move through it and learn from it.
if there was one dead person that you could talk to, who would it be?
Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist who just recently passed away last year.
Oh dang, why?
I think there's a lot of wisdom there, and I wish that I had an opportunity to meditate with him while he was alive. Yeah.
If there's one thing you recommend to all the youth to do, what would it be?
Find people that you trust that you can confide in. Yay!
All right, guys, that concludes our lightning round. I want to say thank you to our very sexy, very positive, very Asian auntie, Jayda.
Thank you.
Let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Jayda Kissed, so JAYDA_KISSED. If you know the reference, then you are at the age where we can actually hang out.
Hey.
And then my website is auntiejayda.com, so AUNTIEJAYDA.
And thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two like we did. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below what you guys want us to talk about next. Yeah. And remember, live fast, eat ass.